Hi there and welcome to Hyundai Power Equipment. My name's Adrian and today we're going to look at the servicing on your HYM430SP lawnmower. We're going to include changing the air filter, changing the spark plug, changing the oil and changing the blade. Okay, let's get straight on with it then. First off, we're going to change the air filter. The air filter is located here in this plastic cover on the front left-hand side of the engine from the operator position. On the top of the air filter there are two plastic lugs, one here and one here. To open the assembly, simply push down on the two lugs and pull the top of the box out from the lawnmower. There are two semicircular hinges on the bottom that sit over these rods to replace it. The air filter is this flat panel here, and a new air filter would fit in this location here. To replace the cover, latch the bottom in, hinge it up and push it firmly into position. And that's the air filter changed. So let's change the spark plug. The spark plug is located here under its cap on the front left-hand side of the engine. To remove the cap, simply pull it off firmly and we'll tuck it to one side. The spark plug is located here. Using the spanner right down over the spark plug until it sits on the hexagon at the bottom. Then using the bar through the little socket and undo it. Will take a little bit of effort just to undo the first bit, but once you've broken the seal, it will unscrew by hand. Okay, let's just unscrew it the rest of the way by hand and remove the spark plug. To replace the spark plug, exact opposite, down into the hole. Make sure that you start screwing it in by hand and it should go really easily. You'll know if it's gone 2-3 turns that you've got it correct and you haven't cross-threaded it. Right down until you can't turn it anymore with your fingers. Back on with the spark plug spanner. In with the Tommy bar and just tighten it up. On a new spark plug it will have a soft gasket underneath and you will get about a quarter to half a turn of tightness as the small gasket compresses. That's the spark plug changed. There we are. Back on with the spark plug cap and push it down firmly. And that's how to change your spark plug. As part of the service, we're going to change the oil on your lawnmower. And what I would recommend is running the lawnmower for 15-20 minutes or so to get the oil that is in there nice and warm, and then it will flow out far easier when you want to drain it out. So run the lawnmower first, 20 minutes or so just to get the engine warm. Not excessively hot. As long as it's warmed up, it'll make the oil thinner and it'll run out a lot better and you'll get more of the oil out. Okay, so there are a couple of ways we can take the oil out of this lawnmower. We can remove the dipstick and physically tip the lawnmower up, and if you were on a high shelf or a table or something like that, tip the lawnmower up and the oil will pour out through the filler neck into a suitable container. The simplest way is to get hold of a little fluid extractor. These are available from our parts department and they're relatively inexpensive. And theoretically all I have to do, and I shall show you shortly, is to put the pipe down the tube, pump my little extractor and the oil will flow up from the sump into my pot here. Okay, the third way it can be done is that on the bottom of the lawnmower, on the very bottom, it's difficult for me to show you here, there is a nut here. I shall give you a close-up of that afterwards. That nut can be undone and that is in the sump and it will allow the oil to drain. However, the drawback of that is you would need to have the lawnmower up in the air on 4 wheels and still be able to access the underneath to undo that nut to let it drip into an oil pan. But that is obviously an option. But the simplest way is straight out of the filler neck. So I shall do that now. Always handy to have some paper roll for cleaning, because when you're dealing with dirty oil, this is actually a brand new lawnmower, so the oil is spotlessly clean in it, so it's not so grubby. But when you've got dirty oil, always useful to have the correct PPE, you know, the rubber gloves, that sort of thing. But in this circumstance, some blue roll will do nicely. So I'll just put that down the hole. And as you can see, the oil is flowing out. Okay, I'll keep pumping and we'll come back to this in a couple of minutes. So I've been pumping for a couple of minutes now. There we are. That's the noise. My pipe is right down into the bottom. I've just checked it. And I've got all the engine oil out. Okay. I believe this lawnmower is somewhere around 0.6 of a litre. So having emptied the engine oil, the next step is to fill it back up again. That'll be about 3 or 4. I know it's completely empty, or thereabouts. I've got as much as is practicable out of it. And I'll fill it back up again and we'll talk about the level. So I've just topped it up with oil. Let's have a look at the lines on the dipstick. I'll see if I can get this so that you can see it. You'll see an L at the bottom, a cross-hatched area, and the letter H at the top. L is low, H is high, obviously. So what I'm going to do is place the dipstick down into the engine oil, lift it back up, and have a look at our oil level. I'm just there in the centre of the H, and that's just about right. That's at the high level, having refilled the oil. So that's the oil taken out, the oil put back into the correct level, refit the dipstick, turn clockwise until it fills resistance, give it a tug, that's it, that's the oil changed. The alternative point for draining the oil would be this plug here. If the lawnmower were on its wheels, as it were, and you undid this plug and had a bucket or catchment tray underneath, the oil would fall out of the sump, through this hole, and into your container. Just make sure that your blade is out of the way. But that's the alternative for draining the engine oil. Before refilling, make sure that you tighten the plug up fully. So now I'm going to demonstrate how to change the blade on your lawnmower. First of all, for safety reasons, I've already drained the oil from this machine and I'm changing the blade, or demonstrating the changing of the blade, with no oil in the engine, and there is no oil in the fuel in the fuel tank. I have removed the spark plug cap to totally rule out any starting of the machine by me turning the engine. So there's absolutely no way the machine can start because I've removed the spark plug cap. So wearing suitable gloves, take hold of the blade. I'm using a 1/2 inch ratchet here, and it's a conventional bolt which undoes anti-clockwise. A few turns and it will loosen off. Okay. You will notice that there is a hump, a lozenge shaped hump in the outside of the blade, and filling in the back, it's a hollow in the back. So when you come to refit your new blade, just bear that in mind, that the lump is down. So I'll completely remove the bolt and the washer, which is a conical washer. The cone shape, or the hollow, faces in. Should it come off the bolt, you know that the hollow face, the dome this side, is out, the same as the out dome on here, and the hollow down. And I'll remove the blade. To replace the blade, say you've taken this blade or sharpened it, or you want to replace it with a new one, you'll see you have a square hole and an elongated hole. On this side of the base, you have 2 square type lugs and 2 elongated circular lugs, and a central circular one. So with the hump facing up, doesn't matter which way I spin it, turn it, don't know where I am, I always know hump facing up, square to square, that's how it goes. Hollow down, bolt back, place it securely back in position, put my bolt back in while holding it on the location lugs, down to finger tight. I'll put my gloves back on so that if my spanner slips, my hand isn't going to go towards the new blade. I begin tightening the blade. And that's the blade tightened. It does have to go fairly tight. If you do have a torque wrench and you want an actual torque figure, refer to our parts department or service department more likely for the torque figure for tightening up the nut holding your blade. Okay, and that's how to change the blade on your lawnmower. I'm going to show you how to replace the pull start mechanism on your lawnmower. First of all, you'll notice that this plastic cover here covers the pull starter, the black part, and there are two screws in the back. To remove this cover, use a crosshead screwdriver and remove these two screws. Having removed these, simply lift from the back and pop the cover out. This gives you access to the pull starter itself. Then, using a 10mm socket, simply undo the three nuts keeping the pull start mechanism in place. That's the second one. And that's the third. Having removed the three nuts, simply lift the pull starter out of its location and this can be replaced. Parts are available from our parts department. To replace the pull starter, the handle needs to be in this orientation, so remember that when you take it off, how the bolts go. So 1, 2, 3 bolts in situ. Back on with the three nuts. Tighten them down firmly. And now replace the black plastic cover. I'll just come around that side. So to replace the black cover, you'll see that it has little lugs all the way around, and these all go on the inside of the blue part. So that's that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. Pull the pull start handle out of the way. That's it back in position. And replace the two crosshead screws from the holes in the back. That's the one. And that's it. Only takes moments. Pull start has been changed. From time to time, you may need to adjust your OPC cable. A symptom of this is that your OPC handle, or the operator present control handle, becomes all sloppy on the front, so that it's got a lot of play in it. Symptomatic, over time the cable may have stretched, and as you can see there's a lot of play in this cable and a lot of slop in the handle up here. Now ideally there should only be a tiny little bit of slop in the cable. Something so you could maybe move that cable a couple of millimeters, but I can move that probably 50 millimeters with my fingers with no change whatsoever. So adjustment is needed. To adjust this cable, it's done on the other end of the cable down on the engine, and I shall show you that now. So the other end of the OPC cable comes out at this point. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of play in the cable which we need to remove. To do this, use a pair of 13mm spanners, hold the nut on the inside and loosen the nuts. Once you've loosened them, screw the inside nut back away from the bracket pull the cable lightly with your fingers, just lightly, until you feel resistance. Put that nut back against the face. Oh, let me just take it up. Okay, push it back against the back, just pull it until you feel resistance. Hold it back against that face, tighten the nut against the bracket on the inside, tighten the nut against the bracket on the outside, and lock the pair of nuts back onto the bracket. Now as you can see, now we've only got minimum travel on there and the minimum amount of slack up here. There's now no flop in this handle and it pulls back under tension on the OPC lever all the way. So that is how to correctly adjust your OPC cable. Should you damage your cable, these are also available from our parts department. From time to time, you may need to adjust the clutch cable on your lawnmower. The clutch cable is obviously attached to the rear lever here. When you pull the rear lever, it engages the clutch and the lawnmower drives. As you can see from this cable, I have a fair bit of slop in it and it does need adjustment. And I shall show you how to adjust that as part of your service and a part of the routine maintenance. The adjustment is done at this point here. You will need a 10mm and an 8mm spanner. Hold the top 8mm barrel and loosen off the 10mm nut so that you have a clearance between the barrel and the nut. Next step, rotate anti-clockwise this top cable and it will turn in its entirety, just the top cable. As you turn it and the gap here gets larger, it will reduce the slack in the cable. Now that's now got about 10mm either way of free play. Another turn, that's about right. Same as the OPC cable, about 6mm of play, but not under great tension. So as you can see, there's about 6mm of play there. That would be the correct adjustment. The next step would be to wind that nut back up against the longer barrel. Again, holding the longer barrel with a spanner, on with a 10mm, and tighten the two together. And that is how to adjust your clutch cable. As you can see, this is at the correct tension and there is about 6mm of play in the cable. And that's the correct tension. No great tension, it's not pulling, but there is about 6mm of play in the cable and the handle's not rattling. So that's the correct tension. To give you a close-up, 8mm spanner on the top barrel, which is the longest one, 10mm spanner on the lock nut, and loosen. To tension the cable, revolve the complete top cable holder until the correct tension is achieved. Having done this, tighten the lock nut back to the longer barrel, again holding the longer barrel with a spanner, tighten the 10mm nut against the barrel, and that's the adjustment point for the clutch cable. Over time, the drive belt on your lawnmower may become slack, resulting in lack of drive. It is self-tensioning on a spring-loaded device here. However, when it becomes excessively worn, you may well get slip and the belt will need replacing. So I'm going to show you how to replace the drive belt on your lawnmower. I have removed the blade as shown earlier in this video. The next step will be to remove these two screws, one here with a crosshead screwdriver and this bolt here with a 12mm socket. So I'll get on with that. So the bolt in the top, you probably will need a ratchet to loosen it, but I've just pre-loosened it to show you that that bolt has to come out of there. This screw here with a crosshead screwdriver needs to be removed. And the lower screw here. Having removed the 2 screws and the bolt, we can now remove the black protective cover. This protective cover will come completely out of the way over the top of the little drive flange there. Just line up the flat with this flat. Maybe may have to rotate the shaft a little bit and pull it up out of the way. As I said earlier, before removing the blade, and when you're working on this area of the lawnmower, remove the spark plug cap. We've gone through that. Self-tensioning, as you can see, the belt will become slack. Now this is a new belt, and it's probably in about the right position, and it has, you know, just a little bit of travel, and it's under tension of the spring. To remove the belt, simply roll it over the top of the pulley, and that removes it from the drive pulley. You can then remove it by rotating the crank, and out it comes. It hooks over the rear pulley, then you can hook it over the front pulley. Simple as that. That's the drive belt changed. To replace with a new belt, line it up this way, hook the belt over the rear pulley. It's quite easy to see in there. Again, rotate it over the little drive coupling. That puts you onto the shaft. Just make sure you're still on at the back, and then feed it over the main spindle pulley. That's the belt replaced. The next step would be to refit the black plastic cover. I shall do that now. So to replace the black plastic cover, which is the belt protector, loop it back over the far end. It's a bit of a fiddle. Let's just loop it back over the far end, just over there, over this end, and in it goes. And it simply locates back into position like that. You may have to wiggle and jiggle it a bit like I just did, but it isn't a difficult one. Back in with the bolt on the top. Just leave that loose for the moment. Back in with the 2 screws. Here we are. That's one started. Just start the other one. And tighten down the 2 screws. And finally tighten down the top bolt. Simply replace your blade as I described earlier, and that's your belt change and inspection done.